Convene this Tuesday, October 10th, 2017, regular meeting of the Board of Lane County Commissioners. Good morning and welcome to Harris Hall. Beautiful day today. It's good to see you all. We do have a 10 o'clock time certain today, Mr. Mokrahajski, which we will adhere to. Any adjustments to the agenda?
No, we have none today.
From the board, any adjustments to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move along to public comments. Public comments will be taken in the order that you signed up. Speakers will be taken and limited to a 3-minute, time frame on you speaking. If the buzzer goes off, you'll hear a little ding or a little buzzer when your 3 minutes is up. If you're in the middle of a sentence, finish a sentence. That's cool. But try to be respectful of the people following you, and don't go much beyond the sentence that you're in the middle of. I'd like to welcome you in this morning. I'll call your name, and when I call your name, please step to the mic, identify yourself with your name and address for the purposes of the record. The first person that we have speaking today is Jerry Settlemyer, who will be followed by Art Bollinger. And please correct me on pronunciations if need be. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. Jerry Settlemyer, 78578 Cedar Park Road out of Cottage Grove. I handed to you, or was handed to you, a couple of pieces of paper, and it's kind of dangerous to give something to somebody because they'll pay attention to that and not to the words, but you'll catch it. Those pieces of paper talk about the land use compatibility statement and getting a license for growing recreational marijuana. The first page is an example in the center. Talks about out of Jackson County, it's like 4 steps and you can get it done. It's pretty simple. We're concerned about that. The top of the first page says the land use compatibility statement assures that it's compatible with local land use plan. We may be asking you to review that if in fact that is what you think you're allowing as a county. Isn't there something wrong when the system, our government, allows the quality of life of a 53-year resident to be destroyed by the approval of a new neighbor to move in with increased and constant noise, significant increased traffic, nauseating and headache smelling, intimidations with guns and drones, and often vulgar language? There are at least 4 neighbors who have water problems now. Yesterday it was quoted that there were 30,000 plants and each plant takes a gallon a day. That's an awful lot of water to be coming out of the wells that aren't supposed to be used for irrigation. These neighbors of 53 years and some others are looking for another place to live. That's pretty sad. The single piece of paper I gave you was life of a license application, and I highlighted land use compatibility statement and local opt-out reviewed for prohibited use. If the proposed use is prohibited by the local governing body, and I believe that's you, Lane County, some things that we are certainly asking for. We believe that Lane County does have the authority to exclude recreational marijuana grows on F2 zoned properties. That doesn't seem to be what the standard is. We are asking not a moratorium, but maybe a hold in some of your departments until you have a chance to study and decide what direction you might go with this issue. I understand there's an October 31st meeting, and we're looking forward to being in attendance, at least in participation if we're allowed. Thank you. I beat the bell.
Thank you, Mrs. Settlemyer. Next signed up is Art. Please correct the pronunciation, Bollinger, followed by Dave Piccioni.
Art Bowman, 910 Almaden, Eugene. I apologize to Commissioner Farr for my bad handwriting. I'm here to speak on the impending strike of your county workers. Now, you are commissioners of the state of Oregon, which since the recession has had a so-called recovery. The Oregon Center for Public Policy has documented that this recovery consists of the top 1% having their worth increased by 16%, while the bottom 99% has seen their worth decline by 3%. Lane County, according to United Way report issued a year or so ago has 45% of its population living in what can only be described as poverty. For most people in this state, it's been a downward spiral since the collapse of Big Timber in the 1980s, and it seems like your negotiating team is intent on pushing county workers further down that spiral. From what I understand, they haven't been bargaining in good faith and have been made offers that no union representative would accept. And it seems like they're being pushed further down that spiral, and they're finally pushing back. If you ask me, your negotiators called this strike, and all the county workers are doing is answering that call. I want to urge you to find some way to settle and avert what seems inevitable now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boland. Next is Dave Piccioni, followed by Michael Carrigan. And I believe I got your pronunciation correct. So.
You sure did, Mr. Farr. So this is also about the strike. I'm a member of Eugene Springfield Solidarity Network. And yeah, this strike has already been agreed upon, apparently, because there has not been compromise between the county and the county workers. There's approximately 700 county workers. The county workers are the lower pay, all the workers are paid less than the management. But the reason for the strike right now, as far as I understand it, has to do with money, as I've been saying. The attempt at bargaining was the workers were trying to get as much as they could, and the management was trying to get as much as they could. So basically, the management, which includes all county commissioners, except Mr. Sorensen, which I think supports the workers, the county administrator, Steve Molahowski or something, and Inga Wood, the human resources lady, have decided that 19% of the money the raise should be 19% for the administrators, and the workers get a 2% raise, 19 to 2. So that's like, I give you 10 and you give me 1. That's what you're doing. You're saying these guys get 10 and these guys get 1, even though these guys work just as hard as these other guys. So this is what you're doing. So this is what the administrator's doing, and this is what the human resources is doing. So just so you know, 10 to 1, plus what you already had in it. You had more to begin with. So that's what it's at.
Thank you. Next signed up is Michael Carrigan, followed by Deborah McGee.
Good morning. My name is Michael Carrigan. I live at 1439 West 4th in Commissioner Sorensen's district. I'm testifying today representing Community Alliance in Lane County, or CALC, which has been working for justice in Lane County for over 50 years. CALC is calling for justice for Lane County workers, calling for a fair contract for all of them. Lane County workers keep the county running. They deserve fair wages and affordable health care as they serve the public, including many of the most vulnerable people in Lane County. I've lived with a Lane County employee for the past 20 years. Some of you know who she is. She has been steadfast in her work, serving clients with developmental disabilities, putting her heart and soul into her work, and she tells me her co-workers do the same. She loves her work and hopes she does not have to go on strike. For 20 years, workers have sacrificed pay to protect their health care, but now the county wants workers to pay for health insurance premiums. For many of the county employees, the 2% pay increase being offered does not even cover the additional health care costs that the county is proposing that they pay. And even some Lane County employees have to collect food stamps to feed their families because their wages are not high enough. All the managers and supervisors all got an average raise of 19%. So it only seems fair that all the workers deserve a true raise, especially the lower paid entry level positions. I know that equity is important to you and to county staff, and please show your commitment to equity by giving your workers a fair contract. And thank you for giving me a chance to speak today.
Thank you, Mr. Kerrigan. Next is Deborah McGee, followed by Lon Otterby.
Good morning. My name is Deborah McGee. I've lived in Lane County for 30 years, 29755 Lusk Road, Commissioner Williams District. I am representing 350 Eugene. We now have over 2,000 members. I believe all of them live in Lane County. We are standing in solidarity with Ask Me Local 2831 Lane County workers. As a woman in this country, I am aware that in general, a woman earns 79 cents for every man's dollar. 72% of the county workers are women. They are currently underpaid, and these workers are not receiving adequate cost of living raises. At this time of extreme income inequality, we in Oregon, we in Lane County, should provide a livable income for county workers. As a 30-year public employee myself, I know it was my union representation that kept my salary and benefits just and fair. You all enjoy a nice salary for your service. Please be just and fair to the county employees as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGee. Lon Otterby, followed by Lois Yoshinga.
Chair Farr, Commissioners, my name is Lon Otterby. I live in Commissioner Williams District, have a small farm up on the Mohawk River. Today I'm representing Many Rivers Group of the Sierra Club. We have a little over 3,000 members and supporters throughout Coos, Douglas, and Lane counties. And we have been working for years, not only to protect our planet and our environment, but also to protect and create good green jobs. And I can't think of anything more green than the health service workers we have here in this county. They have been just wonderful to our people. The fact that several of them are 25% under the prevailing wage in the area is striking to me, and seems unfair. I think it was part of a non-binding arbitration that you all went through, and I would ask you to honor that arbitration as you move forward. The other things that I ask is, as our advocates here in this county, that you treat our neighbors and friends working for all of us with the same respect you give your colleagues and managers. Give these workers a living wage they deserve for the service that they provide to all of us. One of our mottos is, folks that don't have a living wage can't support a living planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Otterby. Lois Yoshinga, followed by Michael Allen. And please help me with pronunciation if I'm incorrect.
My name is Lois Yoshishige, and I live at 225 East 34th Place in Eugene, in Pete Sorensen's district or area. I work as a clerk at the University of Oregon, and I'm represented by SEIU 503. And I have been out on strike twice in 1987 and 1995. And one of the reasons was for health insurance. I understand that the county is 72% employees, women employees, which is similar to the state. I hear that as much as 25% of the employees are under market. And to me, that means that the county is balancing its budget off the backs of female employees. I think it's outrageous for the county to expect women to carry the burden of their budget crisis. It is so important for women to have affordable family medical insurance. We who are often the breadwinners of our family. The current contract proposal is unacceptable. You can and must do better. The way it is with a 2% cost of living increase, not even covering medical insurance, a situation like that has been a strikeable issue for our unit, and it would be again. And we will stand with our sisters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yoshishige. Next is Michael Allen, followed by James Barber.
Good morning. Michael Allen. I'm from Florence. My address is 87490 Rhodawood. Live just north of the town of Florence. The reason I'm here is just to introduce myself and the fact that I have been a host at your Harbor Vista Park in years past, and like the area so well that my wife and I have settled just within 5-minute walk of the park. And what we've done is created a Friends of Harbor Vista Park with the idea to enhance the educational opportunities and work very closely with Mike Russell and others and the staff to actually move that along. We've got amphitheater boards and we've started actual programming. But with that said, I also, as part of being so involved with the park system, joined forces with the task force to develop the new master plan. And I and Jerry Mounts, who is here with me, are the coastal representatives on that task force. We've done a lot of good work. I know you're going to hear about it today. We support it. We like seeing a lot of good opportunities in the goals for educational opportunities for things like the Friends Group. So with that said, I'll turn it back to you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
You're welcome.
Next is James Barber, followed by Pat Hoover.
Morning, Commissioners. Gary, it's no secret that I'm running for the East Lane County seat for this board. So when I say that I support Lane County workers, it might be easy to dismiss it as rhetoric or an attempt to get union support for this campaign. But I've pledged to only accept individual donations. So I'm not taking any money from unions, and I'm not asking for any money from unions. I'm here because I support the Lane County workers and workers all over the county, union and non-union. I owned a small business for 13 years. There's always some tension between management and labor to keep costs down for clients, in this case, Lane County taxpayers. And I get that. But I don't see this as a competition to be won by one side or the other. It's my hope to see management and labor work together in a partnership that best serves the people of Lane County. Management and labor can and should work together to ensure the fair treatment of workers. We can all focus so that we can all focus on serving the public to the best of our ability, rather than worrying about paying the rent or medical bills. Do you see our union brothers and sisters as partners or opponents? They're on the verge of strike because they don't feel like they're partners in this process. They love their jobs. They love helping this county be successful. They don't want to strike. But they see management and those already making healthy salaries getting substantial raises and complete health care coverage, while labor's being offered peanuts. You're asking those at the bottom to go without while rewarding those at the top. I want you to consider their perspective. What would you do if you were one of those at the bottom being asked to go without, so that those at the top don't have to suffer the burdens of the middle class and the lower class? Please support a fair contract. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. Next is Pat Hoover, and Ms. Hoover is the last person signed up. Subsequent to Ms. Hoover's testimony, I will invite anyone else who has not yet signed up to provide testimony. Ms. Hoover.
Good morning, Chairman Farr, Commissioners, Mr. Mokerheisky. My name is Pat Hoover. I live in District 5. I'm the former chairwoman of the Parks Advisory Committee. I've been retired from that position now exactly 1 year today, October 10th. I'm here because at 10 o'clock at your time certain, you will be seeing a presentation by the company that the county has hired to do the master plan, MIG from Portland. And I've followed this master planning process even in my retirement from the Parks Advisory Committee. And I'm so impressed with the work that MIG is doing and the things that I've reviewed and have come by me. I'm very impressed. I think they are absolutely working to the betterment of Lane County Parks and for sure matching the strategic goals of Mr. Mokerheisky's strategic plan of 2014, and that is openness and transparency and accountability. Their work is refreshingly believable, and it's heartwarming to me to be able to read the parts of the master plan that have been presented and know that there's no hidden agenda. Nothing's being covered up, nothing's being pushed under the rug or not talked about. The honesty is really refreshing to me, and I think they're on the right track. And when I was on the PAC, you all were very supportive of me and the work that I did and remained engaged and interested in what your Parks Advisory Committee was doing. And I ask you to give that same interest and engagement to the presentation today and to the continued completion of our master plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hoover, and thank you for your work on the committee. That concludes the signatures for the testimony this morning. I'd like to invite anyone in the audience to provide testimony at this point in time. If you wish, please step forward to the mic and identify yourself with your name and address. I see no one. This concludes. Thank you. Please step to the mic. You'll have 3 minutes. State your name and your address for the record.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Anthony Samperio. I live at 132 Hanson Lane in Eugene, Oregon. I don't know what district that is because I just moved here from Los Angeles. As you can see by my Dodger hat, we had a really good series against whoever those schmucks were, right? And so anyways, I just would like to say that I'm here. I moved here to Eugene as a labor organizer for SEIU. SEIU stands in solidarity with the impending strike. I would like to make note that during these public comment sections, 7 people stood and spoke in favor of the strike, and no one spoke against the workers. Little kind of balance there. We want justice for Lane County workers, including fair wages, affordable health care, a dignified wage to have a dignified lifestyle. As commissioners, you set the impetus. You are culpable as anyone, right? More culpable than the workers would be in demanding their fair share. So we put it on you. We put it on your shoulders to make it better for these workers, make bargaining a little easier for them. They just want to live a dignified lifestyle. The people will always prosper. The people have always prospered, and your seats are up for grabs. So we'll remember in November. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes public testimony. Would anyone else wish to address the Board of County Commissioners on this date? Thank you. Then we'll move along to the next portion of our agenda, which is the Commissioner's response to public comments and/or other issues or remonstrances. I'd like to invite you to remain for the Commissioner's responses. At this point, Commissioner's response. Do I see any responses? Commissioner Sorensen.
Well, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming for public comment today and make sure that the public is aware that local government meetings in Oregon are often characterized by a period of public comment where people can come in from wherever they are throughout the community and come in and take 3 minutes to give their point of view. And we had a lot of different points of view this morning on different topics. I personally appreciate the time, the energy, the heart that goes into these times. And I know it's pretty hard to drive all the way from Florence, 60 miles, to have 3 minutes, or even come from around the Eugene-Springfield area and get here on time, park, get here, and give your time. But I have been fortunate in my life to have worked at the congressional level, been a state senator, now commissioner, and this public comment forum is unique to local government. It doesn't happen in Congress. You can't. I've testified one time my whole life before Congress. It's invited testimony only, and it's same in Salem at the state legislature for the most part. So this is a unique experience, and I hope that we continue this. And I appreciate everyone coming, and I certainly respect your point of view.
Thank you, Commissioner Sorensen. Further comments and or remonstrances? Seeing none, I'll just add my own that the work of the and Mr. Mounts, I see you're in the audience. The work of the committee, the public, the master plan committee has been you've been working for 2 years on this now, and the issue was swirling around for many years prior to that, and the work that you've done is just amazing. I've been looking at the work and the amount of time that you all put into it. I want to personally thank each of you. We don't often get a chance to do that in public, but thank you for the work that you've done, and thank you for the service you provided the people of Lane County. Ms. Moker-Heisky, how many parks do we have in Lane County? It's 53, is that right, Mike?
72?
72.
70. Okay.
72 parks in Lane County, and this master plan will incorporate a plan for each of the parks for the various uses of each park. So I'm excited to hear that at 10 o'clock on our time certain today. Further comments from the board? Then I see none. Mr. Moker-Heisky.
Would you like me to provide some comments just about the public testimony regarding negotiations?
Yes, please.
So first, Mr. Chair, I want to thank everyone who came to testify today, particularly those who traveled a long distance to do so, and particularly related to the bargaining, the public comments related to our ongoing bargaining efforts. I just wanted to share a few comments with you. First, to say that AFSCME members are our employees. We're a team here in Lane County, and the discussion related to a strike does not and will not change that. The ongoing discussions and disagreement that has happened throughout our bargaining process over the past 7 months is related to pay and benefits for a group of our employees, and when a disagreement cannot be resolved in negotiations with a unit such as AFSCME that is not strike prohibited, the remedy for the union is to strike, and we understand that. That's part of the process. We respect that right that those members and our employees have. What I've said to our leadership is we respect all of our employees, the work that they do. We value our employees and the work that they do. And if our employees choose to strike, we will respect that. We will do our best to manage those impacts and limit the impacts to the community. And then we will welcome our employees back with open arms when it's over. And we will begin the process of healing and moving forward. I want to also say Ms. Hoover made a comment about our strategic plan and some things that we've been committed to over the last several years. And I want to restate that Lane County is committed to transparency on issues having to do with our budget and negotiations, that we're accountable to our community and its residents. A big part of that accountability is keeping our commitment to staying within our budget. And negotiating contracts with our bargaining units is a critical piece of maintaining our commitment with our community. We've spent the past several years creating long-term financial stability through a structurally balanced budget with the intended purpose of not laying anyone off. So we've eliminated a $6 million structural deficit in the road fund and the general fund without any layoffs, because we said we don't need fewer employees in Lane County. We need more people providing services. We also want to create long-term stability within our workforce. And so you can imagine the certainly the concern that we have about about the discussion of a strike. But it's also important to remember that Lane County government has negotiated with 5 of our 7 bargaining units over the course of the past year, and reached settlement agreement with all of those 5 unions for substantially the same terms that are being discussed with AFSCME. These terms give both reasonable increases to employees and allow Lane County to stay within our budget. There are a few comments, and several of the comments that we've heard is about treating people equally, and I think that's both a reasonable and appropriate request for people to make, that we treat all of our employees equally. I think it's also really important to understand that from the county's perspective, we are seeking to treat everyone equally, that the 5 bargaining units that represent nearly 500 employees that we've settled agreements with, we've used the same 5-county comparable to determine the market adjustments that were made. For non-represented employees, which there were comments here this morning, and we've heard comments about the adjustments that have been made there, use the 5-county comparable. For elected officials that's been discussed, we use the 5-county comparable. So for all of those groups where there have been increases over the past several years, we've used the same 5-county comparable. The 2 substantive ongoing discussions that we've had with the AFSCME bargaining units are a difference of opinion that we are maintaining. We need to treat everyone equally and use the same 5-county comparable for market adjustments for the AFSCME employees that we've used for the other 5 bargaining units, for 626 and Admin Pro, the public works unions, for LCPUA, our deputies, for the prosecuting attorneys in the district attorney's office, and for the parole and probation employees, as well as for non-reps and as well as for electeds. So that issue of equity relates on this topic, that we are seeking to use the same 5-county comparable, so that we're looking at positions within our entire organization and comparing them to the average of those 5 counties, and then making adjustments based on that factual data. There were also comments about, I just want to clear up a few factual inaccuracies. A number of people stated that we have that 74% of our workforce are women. Actually, if you look at the entire county workforce of about 1,400 employees, 54% of our workforce are women and 46% are men. Within the AFSCME bargaining unit, approximately 75% of the members of the 2 AFSCME units, the general unit and the nurses unit, are women. It's also true that of the other 5 bargaining units that represent nearly 500 employees, 75%, 74% of those other 5 bargaining units, approximately 500 employees, are men. And again, the contracts that were agreed to with those 5 bargaining units include 2%, approximately 2% annual COLAs, slight market adjustments, and the health insurance plan that is being proposed here. There's a comment about affordable medical insurance, and we agree with that. Currently, our employees do not contribute. Many of our employees do not contribute to health insurance, and that is a benefit that our employees value, and we want to try to maintain that. And we believe we're doing that by offering anywhere from 0 to up to 50, a maximum of $50 per month after employees do a once-a-year free annual screening to get $20 per month waived. There's still a zero-cost plan, and then up to $50 per month made available. And you can compare that, because one of the comparables that the AFSCME bargaining unit has used is Peace Health for some of the medical workers. Peace Health, full-time Peace Health employees, for the comparable copay plan that we offer, pay over $300 per month in premiums. If you're a part-time employee at Peace Health, you pay over $500 per month for the equivalent of our copay plan. For the equivalent of our high deductible plan at Peace Health, you would pay around $150 per month for a full-time employee and around $300 per month for a part-time employee. And then I finally want to just say that we continue to work in mediation. I attended the mediation session last Tuesday and spoke directly with the bargaining unit. I spent all day and until nearly midnight on Friday night. Our team, as well as the two bargaining unit teams, worked to continue our ongoing discussion. We've tried to set a respectful tone and try to work towards common interests and settle a contract. That is our interest. That is the board's interest. And we will continue to work on that front. We had met with the board in executive session last week, and the board provided us additional authorization. And so we really have been looking at the positions at the lower level, the lower paid positions within the organization, trying to offer some more that we can do there and do everything that we can to move towards a settlement agreement. But I think it's really important to continue to stress the need for equity across the organization, that if we're going to treat everyone equally, we need to use the same market comparables and the same data to support the decisions throughout the organization, as well as for our health insurance plan. So thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, just want to say that we will continue to work on these issues, and we value and respect our employees, and we value and respect the taxpayers in Lane County.
Thank you, Mr. Mokrajewski. And typically, I would the administrator would not respond to public comment, but you have a place later in the agenda where you have a chance to make announcements. I did grant that this time because some of the folks would likely be gone by the time you had an opportunity to respond. And a reminder for you, Mr. Mokrajewski, that publicly several times now I've noted that during the negotiations, to avoid conflict of interest, I am not participating in the negotiations. I am recused from negotiations on this subject. Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Then we'll move along. Mr. Mokrajewski, any emergency business today?
No, we have none today, Mr. Chair.
We have no emergency business to the board? Any emergency business? I see none. One thing I failed to mention, you notice that Commissioner Lycan is not here. Commissioner Lycan today is excused from participation he's on county business today away from Harris Hall. Then we move along to item 5, which is our consent calendar. All items on our consent calendar are considered to be routine by the Board of Commissioners and enacted by a single motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items. Should discussion have been necessary or desired, we would have pulled it from the consent calendar item. So today we have the consent calendar for October 10th, 2017. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Bozevich.
So I'll move approval of the October 10th, 2017 consent calendar.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Bozevich, seconded by Commissioner Williams. Discussion to the motion? I see no discussion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 4-1 with Commissioner Lycan excused. Moving along, County Council. I see no council presence in the room. Mr. Mokrajewski, do you know of any council business?
I'm not aware of any, Mr. Chair.
Then we'll move along to County Administration. Any announcements beyond those already made?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for granting me that time, sort of out of order there, to respond to the discussion this morning. The only other thing I'd like to share is that 2 weeks ago we had our 2017 Lane County Wellness Fair and Flu Shot Clinic, and it was a big success. We had an incredible team from our Health and Human Services staff who administered 251 flu vaccines 2 Fridays ago at the Public Services Building, and 84 flu vaccines on Wednesday, last Wednesday at our behavioral health office. I want to thank Lisa Chambliss, Sydney Buffington, Anand Holtzman Keithley, who are all registered nurses with Lane County, Christy Sears, who's a licensed practical nurse, Barb Hibbets, who's a registered nurse, and she's a volunteer nurse who helped our communicable disease office for years, and she just has done an incredible job. Jeannie Robluski, who's a registered nurse, Kaylee Pierce, Kate Blair, and Pat Dotson, all part of our Health and Human Services team, who just did a phenomenal job. They're really great. And I got my shot 2 Fridays ago, and after I got the shot, I said, "Did you do it yet?" I could barely feel it, and so they did a wonderful job. well over 300 flu vaccines that were administered over the past couple weeks, and again, we thank them. Our communicable disease staff will be going to the Riverstone and Delta Oaks clinics this Thursday to administer more vaccines. Actually, this might have been last week, last Thursday, to administer more flu vaccines. Our human resources staff helped to man that event. Pete Zugelder, our safety program specialist, and LaDonna Vigil, our senior program specialist in human resources. And we had a number of vendors there that participated and brought some great raffle prizes and shared information. Vendors from Aflac, Delta Dental and Moda, IMED, Inova, which is our EAP program, International Fitness, Lane County Credit Union, Marathon Health, Matrix, Pacific Source, TIA, WDG, and others. And so really a great opportunity. As the board knows, we've had a real focus on health and wellness in our organization. We moved to a self-funded plan 2 years ago. We opened a wellness clinic for our employees that provides free access to health care for our employees. And we've done a lot of things around healthy eating challenges, exercise, diet and exercise challenges for our employees. And we've had just some great success in helping the culture of our organization move away from feeling like health insurance is just a plastic card that we take to the doctor when we're sick, but really having all of us gain ownership of our own health and wellness and get our employees healthy and back to work quicker and ultimately manage and reduce the costs that we spend for those things. So I want to thank all the great staff who helped us launch a successful 2017 Lane County Wellness Fair and Flu Shot Clinic. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mokrajski. Responses to Mr. Mokrajski? I see none. Other than I'm waiting for my flu shot. Usually they like to take photos of the commissioners getting flu shots, so I intend to get mine. Then we do have a 10 o'clock time certain. We're a few minutes in advance of that at this point in time, and to stay with the schedule, we will adhere to 10 o'clock time certain on that. So we'll move down the agenda to Commissioner's Business. Do we have any Commissioner's Business today? Announcements? Commissioner Bozich.
So I've got a couple. First, I had Sheriff Trapp as my guest on my weekly internet radio show last week, and we had a long discussion about emergency preparedness and all that. And that is archived online, so if anyone wants to listen to that discussion between the sheriff and myself, you can find that at KRBN Internet Radio on Facebook is probably the easiest way to find it, or just look for my Facebook site and look for last week's posting of the sheriff coming on the show and click the link there. I participated in the Criminal Justice Commission's Justice Reinvestment Grant Review Committee last week on Thursday. Our DA was also appointed by the governor to be on that committee, and it was chaired by our local Senator Prozansky. So it was kind of a small Lane County homecoming sort of as to participate on that committee. But that committee reviews all the justice reinvestment grants for the entire state. And that's the program that the legislature put $40 million in to try and reduce prison usage and to reduce recidivism and try and prevent the need to build an additional prison in this state. And I'm pleased to report that all 36 counties were awarded their base funding for at least 1 year. There were 4 counties that were funded provisionally for only a year and will have to reapply after a year to get their second year of funding. But and that include, and Lane County was one of the ones that got the full 2 years of base funding. There were 12 counties that applied for the supplemental that came up towards the end of session, where $7 million was put in for what they refer to as 416 program, which is a downward departure pre-sentencing diversion program of folks dealing with property and drug crimes, a program that Lane County piloted over the last couple of years with a federal grant and some of our own monies. And all the counties were approved for that, but the requests were for about $8.5 million. So there's going to have to be some haircutting done on that. So we'll see what we get out of our portion of that. But we were one of the counties also approved for that. So it was really nice to be in the meeting. Really great to be able to read through all those applications across the state and all the great work being done to try and reduce prison usage and, help people out, because a lot of these programs are all about diverting folks out of the criminal justice system that are really dealing with mental health and addiction issues when it comes right down to it, getting them into programming, getting them to deal with those issues, teaching them to think a little bit differently and problem solve a little bit differently, and get them the case management and supervision to finish that up. And of course, usually with the stick, that if they don't adhere to the programs that they're with, they'll end up in prison anyway. And it's amazing the success rate we're having with those programs, and the cost we're saving to the state as we've prevented building the Junction City prison, and we're holding on to not having to build an additional women's prison right now. So interesting work, and it kind of carried over into Monday's AOC meeting, the public safety meeting. I want to note real quick on AOC, they are looking at a 3% increase in our dues. We're the second highest paying dues county in the state because we pay all these special extra dues for being members of the Forest Trust Land County, being Federal Forest County, being all these various things that we tip in for. So even though we're not the largest county by population, we're the second largest dues paying county in the AOC, and they're looking at a 3% increase in our dues. And we currently are paying $104,000 a year, so that's and they're talking about going further to try and bring back some staff on the human services side. So because I just happened to be one of the last people in the room, got assigned to a task group to look at that particular issue about whether they want to go beyond 3% or not. So I'll kind of keep the board up to date on that because it is pretty significant. But I do think we get a lot of value out of AOC. And finally, in public safety meeting, we had some presentations, and one of them was from Steve, I'm going to miss his, Robinson, who happens to be Representative Nathanson's spouse, but it's also about the Cascadia subduction zone and resilience and preparedness for that. And it brought to mind to me some of the more recent disasters we've had in this country and the impact on nursing homes and the preparedness of how to deal with that with nursing homes. Miami, Puerto Rico, even in Houston, there were issues about evacuating nursing homes and difficulties in that. And as a tag on to this, I'd like us maybe to think about, as we're thinking about our resilience here in Lane County, maybe having a work session item sometime in the future to talk about what Lane County is doing to help nursing homes in this area prepare for the possible Cascadia subduction zone or any other emergency that might require, where they lose power for we lost power in some neighborhoods of Eugene for 8 days in the ice storm, or we had to evacuate areas of Lane County for fire. Are our nursing homes in this area prepared for that? And we don't want to be the next Miami where there's a nursing home directly across the street from a hospital and people are dying from heat exhaustion. So it's something I'm concerned about and kind of keeps me up at night, and I think maybe we need to consider looking at in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Willovich, and thanks for mentioning Puerto Rico. A lot of people forget that Puerto Rico is a part of the United States, and that the response that we provide locally, and that is on the contiguous 48 and Hawaii and Alaska, we sometimes forget the fact that our friends and our neighbors and our country folks and country people in Puerto Rico often get overlooked. Very good. Further comments? Announcements? Commissioner Sorensen, I see none. Then I'll mention just quickly regarding AOC. I attended on Friday, on Friday was the Association of Oregon Counties Housing committee meeting. And you know, Mr. Mokrzycki, we do a lot for low-income housing in Lane County, and it becomes more and more evident every time I attend meetings at AOC and in other counties. 2 weeks ago, I attended a panel. I sat on a panel at Clackamas County. Clackamas County is a little bit different to Lane County. It's about the same size, a little bit larger in population, but they have a lot of medium-sized cities where we have 2 pretty good-sized cities and lots of smaller cities. So in Clackamas County, they have a little bit different of a challenge. They have lots of mayors of cities that are about 20,000-ish people. And so there's a lot more juggling that they have to do as far as response, a unilateral response on the housing. But Clackamas County is beginning a housing project, which they're building solid-walled, solid-roofed houses in a Clackamas County parking lot. The house is going to resemble more what we call Opportunity Village in Eugene, as opposed to Emerald Village. Emerald Village is self-contained tiny houses. Opportunity Village requires external sanitation. The sanitation facilities are in a separate unit than the bedroom. So but Clackamas County is taking a good hard look at what we're doing in Lane County, and doing what they can to pull some of the quivers out of some of the arrows out of our quiver and put them into their quiver. So it's really, Commissioner Bozievich, you mentioned the value we get from AOC. We and the other counties in Oregon get the same level of value. We share successes, we share failures, and we discuss them and learn from one another. On Monday, I attended the Veterans Committee meeting and also the Health and Human Services Committee meetings of AOC. And they are, I attended those by phone, by conference call, the latter two. And once again, providing insights as to how we can better provide our services, and they get insights from us as to how they can help provide their services. So thank you for that. And thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Bozievich. Any other announcements? Commissioner Sorensen, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention a little bit more on the construction excise tax that I had brought up a few weeks ago. And I learned a little bit more about this, that the Central Oregon Builders Association, in preparation for the city of Bend to have a construction excise tax, estimated that the city of Bend was the largest housing construction borrower in the Central Oregon area. That figures, since it's the largest city. But during the time that the construction excise tax has been in place, the city of Bend has loaned out $11 million, which funded 615 units of housing, including 539 multifamily units, over 2/3 of which are below 60% of AMI, and the remainder is below 80% of AMI. 76 single-family homes, 1/4 of which were 50% of AMI. So the developers in the city of Bend, the majority of these units would not have been funded without the city of Bend's housing fund assistance. And to me, that's a reason to examine the decisions of Tillamook County, Hood River County, as well as other cities and counties in Oregon that are considering a construction excise tax, where the funding actually helps leverage state and federal funding. And in fact, in Bend, the affordable housing fee has leveraged over $62.6 million in state and federal funding, and $14 million in private equity funding that has come in because they had the City of Bend construction excise tax to help jumpstart that. So I really think that we ought to take a hard look at this. I know that the Housing Policy Board members have looked at the memo that Steve Dingle wrote for the board, and they do have some additional clarifications that are based upon his initial memo, and I just want to encourage the board and agenda team to look at this issue and schedule a work session. I know you're probably getting that done or already been done.
We are. It is in a future agenda.
Yeah, I just think John Van Lanningham and others that are involved in housing policy issues from our community would be good people to help involve in that.
Thank you, Commissioner Sorensen, and thank you for your continued interest in continuing to bring that forward. I'm checking to see if I can see. It's, I believe it's on the November 7th agenda. But,
I didn't bring my future agenda.
it is scheduled, so that is forthcoming. So we still do have a couple of minutes. I see members of the task force are beginning to assemble, but we still have a couple of minutes before the time certain, which we will adhere to, Mr. Russell. So I have a moment to talk about a law that went into effect last week in Oregon. The Oregon's new 2017 distracted driving law. If you've not paid much attention to this, and if you're ignoring it, nobody in this room is, I'm sure, but anybody who may be listening, it's pretty serious business. Very heavy fines, predominantly for use of these guys right here. Even as a GPS, you can't use it, you can't hold it in your hand. And at MPC last week, we had someone from the Department of Transportation, actually, who came and gave us a presentation on what it means and what the laws are. Still, some of it seems a little bit vague to me. They have a one-button push law, so you can push the button one time. And my question was, is that one time per week, one time per day, or one time per what? And so I didn't get a clear answer on it. So the safe thing to do is not push the button. In fact, there are applications you can put on your phone where you can actually register when you're driving, and it locks you out of being able to use it while you're driving. There's also an application you can put on your phone where it'll lock you out just when your car starts to move. You get locked out. And then you can override it by saying you're a passenger in the car, which you can game it and say you're a passenger when you're actually the driver. But it's designed for, when I'm driving with Debbie, I say, honey, can you get the can you find the directions to pick a place? And it's easy for the passenger to do it. Or you can do it when you're in your driveway, set it, and then just listen to the verbal commands from your GPS without even looking at it. The state police and other jurisdictions are training on recognizing the signs of people sneaking a peek. So you can't really sneak a peek either. So it really is it's a serious one. It's for a reason. Coincidentally, horribly coincidentally, the day the law took effect, a young woman was killed on Highway 99 just outside of Junction City while using a cell phone. Left the highway using a cell phone and was thrown from the car and killed. So it's a serious law. It's one that is there for a very, very good reason, and one that Mr. Mokrajewski, this is a great sheet that I believe Lane County put this out, Oregon's 2017 distracted driving law. I have a bunch of them in my office. We'll put some down in the lobby of the courthouse here, I think, and everybody should adhere to it, because it's pretty frustrating when you drive around and you see somebody looking at their phone, and who knows what's on the road where they should be looking. So I think I've marked time long enough, Mr. Russell. We can move forward with our 10 o'clock time certain. So, Mr. Mokrajewski, we have before us item 8A, a report in the matter of providing an update to the Board of Commissioners on the Lane County Parks and Open Space Master Plan update. And today we have Mike Russell and Tim Elsey before us, and also members of the task force that did, can I say yeoman's work? I think I can say that. Yeoman's work in bringing this before us today. So, Ms. Mokrajewski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll just make a couple brief comments. Gosh, we've come a long way in a year, and this was mentioned earlier. Pat Hoover mentioned this, and I think the board has recognized the great work really that has happened, and I think it's a testament to the listening that we do in this organization, that, if something is, if there's a correction that needs to be made at a certain time, we try to listen to that feedback. There were concerns that we heard from different parts of the community, from our Park Advisory Committee, around the process for the master plan. We took a pause and we said, okay, what do we need to do to make sure that this is successful? And we did an RFP, selected MIG, and I just want to thank Tim and Mike, the great work that Cindy and MIG have done, in particular the members of the PAC. We have a number of members of the Park Advisory Committee who are here today, Jerry Mounts and the other individual from Florence. I apologize, I forgot your name, Mike. And so I want to thank just the great public participation that we've had from residents throughout Lane County, and the great work that our staff and team have done here. With that, I'll turn it over to Tim Elsey.
And thank you.
Mike, start with comments. Yeah. I'll kind of give a overview of where we're at, and we'll kind of increase detail as we go down the line here. So,
and if I may, something I failed to do, for anyone who's watching at home or watching the webcast, if you click on today's agenda, view items, you'll be able to follow along with all of the information that Mr. Elsey and Mr. Russell and Cindy from MIG. Were you here when Pat Hoover was complimenting you guys earlier?
Yes,
okay,
I was.
Good.
I greatly appreciate that.
Pardon my interruption, please, Mr. Russell.
good morning. Mike Russell, Lane County Parks and Animal Services Division Manager, joined by Director Elsey and Cindy Mendoza from our consultant on the project, MIG. So we were last with you in March, and we discussed at that point we were getting ready to start meeting with the task force and start that process together with the Parks Advisory Committee. We had discussed with you three scenarios, service scenarios for the park system: a water-based scenario, a trail-based scenario, and a nature-based scenario. And the idea was to go out to the public and start getting some public comment about what is the values that the community has related to those three service scenarios. So we'll hear today the results of that. I want to recognize the efforts of the task force and the Parks Advisory Committee in this. So after March, we had 7 community meetings. We had other opportunities with some service groups to present information. We had a booth at the fairgrounds this year, specifically wanting to reach out about the master plan process and getting feedback. And all of these folks gave of their time and effort to be very engaged. It's been one of the most engaged groups that I've worked with here at Lane County. So we have, and I think I have everybody here, Jerry Mounts and Mike Allen, which you heard from earlier, Ellen Otani, Greg Hyde, who's the chair of the task force, Marilyn Cross, Bob Emmons, and Carl from the Parks Advisory Committee, Mary Brorby, Wayne Lemler, who's the chair of the Parks Advisory Committee, and Kevin Shanley. So I think it speaks to the process that these folks have shown up today to lend their support and hear what you have to say as we continue on the process. So thank you all so much for all the work that you've done. So since March, there's been a significant effort to gather public feedback about community values and desires as they relate to the role of Lane County Parks in the community. And we'll hear more of the detail from Cindy as we move along here. The Parks Master Plan Task Force and Parks Advisory Committee have met. Task Force met 5 times. 2 of those 3 were with the Parks Advisory Committee. And with the information gathered from the public outreach process, the task force and Parks Advisory Committee to work on the preliminary vision, mission, and goal statements. And that's another topic we'll talk to you about today. And we're really asking you to give us feedback, give us a temperature where you feel if we're on the right track or not, really wanting to hear your input today. Next steps after today's discussion, we hope to, like I say, get your feedback today, and the intent is to take that and to the next phase of the project, which is to compile the work so far into a new master plan draft and go back out to the public with another round of public involvement saying, here's the new draft, here's what we heard you say, and get a temperature of the community on whether that represents their values or not, and then be back to the board. Probably spring 2018 at this point with hopefully a process of adoption and looking at finalizing this process. So I'll turn it over to Director Elsey for comments, and he'll turn it over to Cindy. So.
Well, I'm incredibly excited to be here today. This is an exciting project. This is sort of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We not only get to develop a master plan for the incredible resource of our 72 parks for the next 20 years, but for the next generation. And to me, that's so important. And it's not a message that has been lost throughout all of the meetings that we have. It's been a great experience for me to work with our partners to help put an action plan to the values of our community and the vision of how our parks will continue to serve our community in the future. I also want to take a moment just to, as Mike did, to thank the Parks Advisory Committee, the Parks Master Plan Task Force, county staff, and our consultant, MIG. And MIG has just been a tremendous partner for us in this process. They've been incredible throughout. But they've put together dozens, if not hundreds, of hours that have been spent in work group meetings, public involvement meetings at the fair, and also in working to develop the work product that is in front of you today. And I want to take just a minute to tell you about the dedication of your Parks Advisory Committee. They not only have 4 members on the task force, but one, if not all, or all, I believe, have been to public involvement meetings or to the fair or have helped provide the guidance for the development of this document so far. They have been tremendous partners on this. I've never seen an advisory committee that has dedicated so much time to such an effort. Today we're here to discuss the work to date and to give you the next steps in the process. Once we leave you today, there will be one more meeting with the task force, and then we will get their direction, and then we'll work to develop the Parks Master Plan draft, as Mike mentioned before. We'll use the direction given to us by the public, our partners, and from you to develop the draft plan. And once that plan's in place, we will take it back to the PAC and to the task force, get it vetted through them one more time, and then go through another robust public involvement process to ensure that we heard the messages and we captured the values of the community. Values is the key word in what I just said, because the Parks Master Plan has to capture the values of the community, or we've not done our job. And so you guys get to hear from me a lot, so I'm going to hand it over to Cindy and let her finish with her presentation.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Mike and commissioners. It's my honor to be here today to talk about the Parks and Open Space Master Plan, to give you a status report of where we are in the planning process, to present some of the highlights from the engagement that was done, as well as to receive your comments specifically on the vision, mission, goals that we have developed through this process. With that in mind, just a real quick overview of where we are now. As you know, this is a process that is resetting and building on an earlier foundation of information that started in this phase of June of 2016 and has moved forward through that first distilling phase where we processed the information that was available and then began to refine it by looking at the vision, mission, goals and looking at the market profile of the community to understand how we want to move forward. We are just about to begin phase 3, where we compile all of the information collected to date into plan recommendations as well as a draft master plan, which is why it's critical at this point to pause and get your feedback to ensure we're on the right track. When we set up the engagement process, clearly we needed to recognize that there are many differences across Lane County from sea to summit. We recognize that there are 6 different regions of people that need to be represented in this process and that they do have different values and ideas of what they bring to Lane County Parks and Recreation. It's also important to note that there was this earlier outreach conducted beginning in 2004 that provided a tremendous amount of insight into what the community wants, what their priorities are for parks, open space, trails, natural areas, and recreation in the future. With that in mind, we are building on this wealth of information that includes staff visioning retreats, 22 focus group meetings, 5 different questionnaires conducted between 2004 and 2015, a community representative telephone survey, as well as the comments that we received from the public on the preliminary draft that was released in September of 2015. In addition to that, again, wealth of information, we also have the benefit of Oregon's statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, which in its last iteration identified on a regional basis, so with a couple of counties combined, some investment priorities and other details with regards to community interests and needs. Just real quickly, in comparison to some of the priorities identified there, we note that things such as soft surface walking paths and trails rise to the top in terms of priorities, as well as providing access to waterways and nature and wildlife viewing areas. So having this information is very helpful as we begin to move forward and start to look specifically at the priorities, needs, and desired investment from Lane County in their parks and natural resources. In 2010, for example, we had residents through the telephone survey identify their priority projects by ranking them on a scale of 1 to 3, low versus high. What we found is that it is a very high priority to take care of the resources that you have in Lane County. Those include parks and facilities, natural resources, as well as historic structures. It's a much lower priority at this point to add new parks, to add new trails. But in the middle, there's sort of a medium priority to improve or kind of augment what we have. Not completely new things, but take the sites that we already have, make them better, make them more accessible, make them more diverse in terms of their recreation opportunities. I introduced that because, again, it gives us a chance to see how community priorities have changed over time and where they stay the same. We went through several different public and stakeholder engagement efforts, which included not only the direction we received from you at the very beginning of the project, but also initiating this task force, keeping the PAC involved, as Mike and Tim have both mentioned, as well as a project branding, creating an identity for this plan, recognizing the importance it has for Lane County. It included things, as Pat Hoover mentioned, the transparency of this project, ensuring that through the website we are keeping the public informed along the entire process, every step of the way, so they can see decisions being made and contact county staff or their task force members or PAC members to ensure that we are on the right track. This includes public informations that have gone out from your public information office to keep the public up to date, and then several public outreach activities, including an online questionnaire, community workshop, and the county fair activities. Just a quick introduction to the task force. Mike mentioned that we have 23 members representing all 6 regions and some specific interests, including planning, natural resources, tourism here in Lane County, as well as partner agencies. Plus, as Tim mentioned, we also have those liaisons to the PAC, so we can ensure that both groups are working hand in hand in terms of master plan development. We have had 5 meetings to date, plus updates to the PAC along the way independently. As Mike mentioned, several of these meetings have been joint meetings between the task force and the PAC to make sure that they are allowed or able to feed off of others' comments and insights to keep us on track in this process. So we've had discussions of parks and open space opportunities that they see for the system, our preliminary ideas around the vision, mission, and the role that the county should play in providing parks and open space, discussion on park priorities and different investment scenarios, presentations on what the community feedback told us in terms of community priorities, and then most recently a discussion of what this all means in terms of the vision, mission, and goals. I mentioned earlier the differences across Lane County in terms of community priorities. Besides just asking community members what they thought, we did take the time to do a market analysis, looking at the tapestry segments, the different residents, their priorities as they exist across the 6 different regions in Lane County. And what we found and what's highlighted here is that there are some areas where certainly family-oriented outdoor recreation opportunities are key. But there are other areas such as the coastal region where the top tapestry segments, the market that is there is really built around older adults and seniors and retirees in particular and their desires for recreation and quality of life, which are slightly different. So we built on this technical analysis with conversations with our PAC and task force. What you're seeing in front of you is a very in-process wall graphic conversation where, based on an activity that the task force members and PAC members were involved in, they were generating concepts associated with their vision that they later clarified needed to be a compelling vision for parks and open space, as well as some preliminary goals or outcomes that they wanted to achieve through the master planning process. As Mike mentioned, we use that feedback plus a technical analysis of your 72 park sites to identify what were some of the most pressing issues or needs for parks and recreation and what that meant in terms of your system. And what we found is that there were 3 service scenarios or different concepts that were emphasized, and we looked at these in a way through an analysis to see what it would mean if, for example, the level of investment was increased tremendously to improve access to waterways, or if the level of investment was stronger to connect people to nature, or to support trail experiences. We looked at each of these 3 independently, mapping out, as you see in the example here on the slide with regards to water concept, what that would mean in terms of facility development, recreation improvements, and the sites that would be enhanced to enhance those types of opportunities. Recognizing that all of these elements are important to residents in Lane County, we also developed a composite scenario that looked at how the 3 different scenarios combined and where there were key sites that were able to advance all of these 3 concepts. With that information and with task force and PAC feedback, we then went out to the public to test these same elements with them to see how they reacted to the service concepts as well as to identify their priorities. There was an online questionnaire with 463 respondents, community workshops held in 7 different locations across the county involving 106 participants, and the county fair booth and rodeo in conjunction with Public Works that had 80 respondents. It's important to note that because we recognized a need to ensure a high level of public participation, that the county staff as well as the Public Information Office made a tremendous effort to reach out to all residents to give them an opportunity to participate in this planning process. It's noted in your staff report in detail the level of effort that was made to reach out to different stakeholders, partners, key interest groups, as well as residents and visitors in general. So we captured park users to give them an opportunity to participate. With that in mind, we were surprised that we didn't get quite as high level of participation as hoped. But recognizing that we did get some feedback, as shown in the graphic with regards to the questionnaire, from across the county, strongest, of course, in the Eugene-Springfield area, but also with strong pockets, for example, in Florence. We found in some of the findings that there were, priorities that the community had that were slightly different from some of the PAC and task force member priorities, but important nonetheless. And one of the things that surprised us was that of the 3 different concepts, it really was those trail opportunities and trail-related connections that rose to the top based on the number of people who indicated that this should be a priority. One of the things that's important is to recognize that not only locally, but also regionally across the state and even nationally, trail-related recreation is frequently the top form of recreation participation because it involves the most people who can participate, broad-based of users, whether they're interested in low-impact or higher-impact forms of recreation, motorized and non-motorized, or even horseback recreation. It is a broad-based type of recreation activity that often garners this level of support. But there still was strong support from approximately 50% of people to invest in the nature-based recreation opportunities, less support in investing in the water-based recreation opportunities. Now, this may be surprising given the number of sites that Lane County has that provide water access. One of the ways we interpret this through additional findings and additional outreach with the public is that Lane County has done a tremendous job in providing these water-based recreation opportunities. It's time to be able to augment those with some different areas of emphasis as well. When we looked at some of the highest priority improvements for Lane County parks, what we found is that there were a tie between nature trails and habitat protection restoration areas. This is followed by beach access and non-motorized boat launches. So right after telling you that the water-based opportunities were not a priority, what we see when we look at the top four is that two of them are definitely water-oriented. What we also found is that there wasn't any one thing that garnered a huge percentage of the response. So there wasn't overwhelming support for just one thing. In fact, the top two, the same percentage of people indicated there was importance to invest in nature trails versus habitat protection. And one of the other things that's important to recognize is the demographic of people that participated in the online questionnaire tended to be older, often women, with definitely we saw a more interest in passive recreation opportunities. So we realized, in the grand experience of having conducted these types of surveys that we did not capture everyone and that there is an overemphasis here on some of the low impact passive recreation such as trail use, picnicking, being outdoors in nature, supporting nature activities. When we ask where the county should focus its investment and allowed people to have two choices, what we found based on the natural breaks in data is that overwhelmingly by 57% of people said that the focus needs to be on improving the maintenance and condition of existing parks. I highlight that in conjunction with that high priority that we saw from the 2010 telephone survey that I mentioned earlier. High priority is taking care of what you have. The secondary priority noted here by approximately 30% of people is providing a mix of existing and new recreation opportunities. Again, that middle priority of augmenting what you have by not building things completely new, but by looking at your existing sites and infusing some new recreation experiences in those sites. Cross-checking what we heard in the questionnaire, we had several community workshops across the county with a different type of emphasis. We created an activity where they were allowed to sit down in small groups and actually design their ideal park. It gave us a chance to see what kind of opportunities and facilities and amenities they would include in their park, what their priorities were, and then ask them to make some decisions based on the cost of the park that they created, recognizing that some of the choices of facilities are really high-cost items, some are low-cost items, and seeing where that put us in terms of the desired level of investment. What we quickly found is that most of the small groups provided a level of investment in parks that is by far higher in terms of the millions of dollars desired in some of these key, what we call anchor destination parks. They also noted very clearly that it needs to be a mix of water access, trails, natural areas, and other types of recreation features. To check what we heard, we also took the opportunity to go out to the Lane County Fair and ask us a simple, engaging question. What do you love about Lane County parks? And this was completely open-ended. They were given a large board, a piece of paper where they could write whatever it is that inspires them about Lane County parks. And we took all those responses from 80 different people and then categorized them based on what they wrote. And what we found, 56% of people at the county fair valued nature, wildlife, and landscape. Those were the things that jumped to the forefront in terms of their priorities. Hiking and trails were second, again, substantially behind that with 25%. 21% focused on different types of activities in parks, and then cleanliness and maintenance, mentioned by a few, as well as, again, at the bottom, water access and activities.
May I ask a question regarding the questionnaire that you had
Certainly.
at the fair? Was that a cold question? That is to say, you didn't say check the things that you like. It's just a cold question. What do you like? And
Yes, this was completely open-ended. It was just a giant board. What do you love?
Right on. Thank you.
So with that in mind, we spent significant time looking at the data. Again, you're getting highlights here. There's a substantial amount of feedback that we received that we built into identifying the vision, mission, and goals for the Park and Recreation Master Plan. So it's important to realize that these goals are not created in a vacuum, but build off of, as Pat Hoover noted and Steve noted as well, the excellent work that Lane County has already done in identifying its strategic areas of focus. It's important to recognize, and we discuss with PAC and task force members, that the vision for Lane County is to be recognized as the best county to live, work, and play. Play being an important element of recreation that recognizes the integral and critical way that Parks and Recreation contribute to Lane County. Looking at the strategic areas of focus, we had conversations around the roles that parks and natural areas play in improving the health of the community, as well as even supporting youth development, as well as keeping youth out of trouble. Certainly, Parks and Recreation also contribute to vibrant communities, in particular supporting vibrant natural environment. Parks and Recreation also have an opportunity to protect existing infrastructure, as called out in the strategic focus area that recognizes the need to improve existing park grounds and create partnerships to invest in infrastructure. So with this in mind, we took those original PAC and task force concepts, cross-checked them with the public priorities, then discussed them in the context of Lane County's strategic plan, goals, and initiatives, and then presented some different options to our PAC and task force members, saying, you know, here's an option for a vision statement, here's some options for mission as well as goals. And through a conversation with them, revised that to be able to come to you today with the information here. The revisions that were suggested by PAC and task force members were also then cross-checked with our county staff as well as the county administrator. And last night, again, discussed with the PAC members, which will give you an update here shortly with their feedback. It's important to recognize that the vision, and these are the parts that I really would like your direction and comments on. A vision is a statement that reflects your aspirations for the future. It's that ideal that you would like to achieve through parks and open space. The statement is, our thriving parks and natural areas connect us to our rivers, reservoirs, and natural features, showcase our heritage and natural diversity, and protect resources for future generations. The mission describes the business or the approach that county staff take in providing parks, recreation, facilities, trails, and open space. So it's more of the nuts and bolts statement of how the county will proceed. Our mission statement is, we responsibly manage, sustain, and enhance our parks and natural resources through partnership, stewardship, and quality customer service. Building on that, we worked hard with the task force and PAC members to identify 6 key goals for how we want to move forward in the master plan. The goals are recognized by a keyword that starts on recognizing a need to collaborate, connect, create vibrancy, generate economic vitality, protect resources, and reflect our Lane County values. These goals are on this slide. I realize that's a lot of words on one slide. This information is also in your staff report on page 4 so that you can see details. The goals that are noted here, again, have been refined through feedback. They focus on Goal 1, collaboration, which is the partnerships that were referenced in the public testimony earlier today. For example, working with the Friends of Harper Vista Park and other Friends groups, as well as working with different local, state, and federal agencies as partners. Also with educational providers who have a vested interest in teaching the community about stewardship. Working with volunteers who have been so instrumental in terms of maintaining and supporting your parks and natural resources. Obviously, Lane County is not working in their parks and natural areas alone, so we felt it was important to call out this extensive partnership as our first goal through collaboration. Connectivity is important as well in terms of this park and open space system, which is why it's noted second. What's interesting about connectivity is, on one hand, it often refers to trail connectivity, for example, linking parks together. But what we really needed to emphasize here, and based on some of the things that we learned in terms of our public outreach, is that the key form of connectivity that is most important through this master planning process is connecting your residents and visitors to your parks and natural resources. Connecting them to nature, connecting them to the outdoors, connecting them to your waterways, and then improving park and facility access through connectivity, focusing on ADA access as well. And then increasing the amount of support that residents have for nature interpretation, for stewardship, through improved communication and better customer service. It's the way that we are reaching out to people and involving them as stakeholders as well as stewards of this park and open space system, so that they have a sense of ownership in this plan and the outcomes as we move forward. The third one is about creating vibrancy. The words you will recognize directly out of Lane County Strategic Plan own words in terms of creating vibrant communities. Recognizing that there was a distinct interest in creating what we call these anchor parks or destination parks, and reinvigorating and revitalizing several key sites as thriving family-friendly outdoor activity hubs by focusing on their redesign, renovation, and even adding programming to help position Lane County, again, to tie to your vision as the best county for outdoor recreation and play. The fourth one focuses on the economic needs of parks and open space, looking at the investment in parks and open space, as well as the opportunity to support larger economic impacts countywide through tourism. The goal reads to create a strategic and holistic park management approach that balances local needs and opportunities, so the needs of nearby residents to your parks, with opportunities to create economic benefits and to generate revenue to reinvest in parks. So it looks at the long-term focus that we need to have to be able to reinvest in parks, but also calls out specifically the need to balance this with the interests of nearby neighbors, and not necessarily look at parks only as revenue-generating machines, but again, in a more holistic way. Another key goal is around protecting resources, which focuses on not only the natural resources in the community, but also those cultural and historic resources that you have, these unique county assets that need to be preserved for future generations. And finally, emphasizing what Tim described so eloquently is the need to reflect the values of this community. Everything we do in this master plan needs to emphasize the diverse natural character of Lane County parks, not trying to bring, when we talk about these new experiences, not bringing things that are more characteristic of municipal parks, but really focusing on some of those low-cost, high-impact, but important moves that reflect the character of the parks, sustain the infrastructure, and improve the quality, safety, and attractiveness of the park amenities, landscaping, and recreation facilities. So there's a lot said within 6 goals. These goals are going to be used to go back and develop strategies for the Park and Recreation and Open Space Master Plan, as well as then to identify some site-specific recommendations for how to move forward in the future. The intent is that we will use these elements to be able to carry forward into Phase 3 with your direction to ensure we are on track to meet again with the PAC and the task force to together develop these recommendations, then present this information in an administrative draft plan initially for county review and an internal review before we present it then to the public for a more extensive public outreach to give them an opportunity to comment on these recommendations and help us refine that plan before it goes through the adoption process. This entire plan will be grounded in a solid funding and partnership strategy, as Steve mentioned early on, reflecting the key interest that Lane County has in terms of reflecting the budget that it has available, as well as finding ways to maximize the ability to invest in its parks to take care of it for future generations. With that, I will open it to any questions or comments that you have, and would specifically like direction. Oh, I did forget one thing. Tim was going to give you a quick update on PAC feedback with regards to those goals.
Well, and one thing I want to start with is I'm certain you can grasp all the work that was condensed in those vision, mission, and goals. And there was a lot of conversations that were had. And I also want to say that all roads lead back to a well thought out living, breathing strategic plan that was approved by this board. And thank you again for that direction. So as we had condensed the vision, mission, and goals that we had received from the task force and the PAC in a joint meeting before, some of the wording got changed. And we took the wording back to the PAC last night, and they generally agreed that we had captured all the intent of the vision, mission, and goals that were presented to us before, but they would like to have the flexibility to look at the first goal, and that's the goal for collaborate, and to add the word connectivity back into that. So they would like the flexibility to take that back to the Parks Master Plan Task Force and talk about whether or not connectivity belongs both in the first goal and the second goal, because they believe that it means 2 different things, as Cindy had mentioned earlier in her presentation. So connectivity between parks would be in the first goal, and then connecting people to parks would be in the second goal. So they would like the flexibility to take that back to the Parks Master Plan Task Force.
Well, thank you for that. That jumped out to me when you made the presentation on the second goal, that it is distinctly 2 types, very different types of connectivity, both of which are appropriate inside of the plan. So that's a good suggestion by the task force. Excellent. Please. That's it. Well, the first thing, before I ask other commissioners, the first thing I want to mention is when we're looking at large work plans such as this, or anything that we do, Ms. Moker-Heisky, as a county, the first thing that I look for is where does this in fact correspond to the strategic plan, which we have adopted and which we continue to work toward. And Cindy, you pointed out very clearly, it's all over the strategic plan. It's in all 3 of our strategic areas of focus. It's in safe and healthy county, vibrant communities, and infrastructure. Even though it's called out specifically in infrastructure, it does apply to vibrant communities, obviously. Support and protect a safe, vibrant natural environment. And when you talk about enhancing safety, you mentioned in particular youth activity and youth involvement, and all of that is integral to the work we do toward public safety in general and maximizing our resources, parks being one of our greatest resources. So I'm loving this. I'm really loving what you've done. So at this point, I'll turn it over to commissioners. Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, thanks to everyone that's involved in this really huge amount of work. I really appreciate the not only the amount of work, but the creativity of the whole thing and how important it all is for us as a community. I am interested in hearing more about the second half of that master plan. There's a lot on Lane County Parks, not as much on open space. I'm just curious how you would answer the question about how much of this is on parks, how much of this is on open space.
It's been interesting that certainly there is an interest in terms of protecting natural resources. There's also a sense, though, that there's not a desired high level of investment in terms of acquiring a lot of additional natural resource areas for protection. With that in mind, there is a great opportunity within parks. So in that regard, the emphasis is on parks to protect the natural resources that you have within parks and do a better job. Right now, there hasn't been a high level of funding investment in terms of stewarding those natural resources because of limited maintenance dollars. Certainly, there has been an effort made in terms of taking care of those resources, removing invasive species, protecting sensitive species, protecting riparian corridors. There can be more done, as well as augmentations to the partnership opportunities to be able to protect those natural resources. In that regard, it is just as much about the natural resources and open space as it is about parkland, recognizing that almost all of your parks have natural resources within them. Very few of them are completely developed.
Yeah, and I would just say that open space is obviously a big arena that Lane County has really not done much with. But when you ask people what they like about living in Lane County, they will not necessarily identify a specific public parks agency like Willamette Lane or Lane County Parks or City of Eugene Parks or even the National Forest. They'll just say it looks beautiful here. It's a beautiful community. It's a beautiful place to live. And the Southern Willamette Valley or the Oregon coast or the Cascades are beautiful. And I'm just interested, as a matter of public policy, of figuring out how we can address and protect something that is maybe hard to talk about, but is still a very important part of what people love about living here. And I like the fact that the words open space are in the master plan, even if there's nothing much we can do about open space outside of Lane County Parks. But we can still do something about open space within Lane County Parks. And I do appreciate that. But I know a few years ago I went to Boulder County, in Colorado. They floated a multi-million-dollar open space program. They bought the development rights to property outside of the city of Boulder into the suburbanizing area around Boulder. And they did it with the support of Boulder County voters who wanted to make sure that what attracted them to the open space and the open space around Boulder was going to be protected. I think it'd be a shame if somehow between Junction City and Cottage Grove, we filled in everything, and everything looked like River Road looks like now, not what River Road looked like 100 years ago. We have the opportunity, if we think about these things, to incorporate them. And so, at least at this juncture, I would say keep the phrase open space in there, because that's something that is meaningful to people.
Absolutely, and if you don't mind, I think that really looks back on the word values. And one of the things, you've heard three things from us, I think, over and over again today, and that's values, transparency, and public involvement process. And so one of the things that we're committed to and will be part of this Parks Master Plan is that if there are significant changes to any park, we will go through a significant public involvement process to ensure that we bring the partners, the community members, the users into the conversation.
Thank you. And, Commissioner Sorensen makes great points, but I think in the bullet-pointed goals that you have, you do cover open space. You don't necessarily call it open space. You call it natural areas and natural resources. And the first bullet point, you say expand and enhance recreation, trail connectivity, and natural areas across Lane County. I view that as the open space. Senate Bill 100 gave us lots of open space. Mandated lots of open space, and as a county, we are we're the chief steward of what you call it here, the connectivity and natural areas across Lane County. And in the bullet pointed goal number 5, you also say sustain and protect unique county assets, cultural and natural resources as our legacy for future generations. So I think you've woven open space throughout the entire discussion. And at that point, it becomes a matter of how does that turn into tactics? How do the goals turn into tactics? And I'm confident with this group of people you got sitting behind you, you're not going to be able to avoid that. So, further comments, Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Farr. Several things come to mind. First of all, that was an outstanding presentation. I congratulate all of you for your incredible work. Before I forget, because I have several comments, first of all, Kevin, you took me out to Buford Park and showed me a lot of work out there, and that was some months ago, and I expect that a lot of that is enhanced and changed, a lot more green than what we saw because they were moving a lot of earth and things. But you can call me anytime and we can do that again. So I really appreciated that opportunity. It was wonderful and eye-opening. I know certain communities have put a strong emphasis on parks and open space. My community in Cottage Grove is one of those. During an opportunity I had with leaders in the community and citizens in the community were projects like Rivers to Ridges and forming watershed councils and all that. I see these as partnerships that can also be blended and dovetailed into our overall plan. Partnerships really are critical to a number of endeavors that result in excellence. So I look at, the citizens of Cottage Grove determined in a 10-year period to make some investments in parks and open spaces. We actually, in a 10-year period, almost doubled the parks and open spaces in the Cottage Grove community. And very exciting to have experienced that and then see where we're at right now with this stellar presentation. And it almost makes me giddy thinking about the opportunity that we have. One of those partners is Travel Lane County. They do a great deal of work in helping promote our region, and our job as being good stewards of the parks that we have, making them inviting and allowing people to come to our area and enjoy those improvements and those enhancements to make their visit more comfortable, whether it's trails, restrooms, those types of amenities, very, very important. And again, I could go on a lot on how impressed I am with what you presented here today. And great presentation. I congratulate you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Further discussion, Commissioner Bozievich.
So I too want to thank all the members of the advisory committee, the task force, and the public that provided input also. Because it's what we're looking for to guide us, and I think you guys have done yeoman's work. And Wayne, I hope you're doing well. Yeah. Had a little accident there. So, you know, even through all that, here he is. I was surprised to see you today, actually. So, glad you could make it. But, you know, as I look at the vision and mission and the goals that you guys are setting out as the template for the rest of the master plan development, because that's really what this is about today. The conversation for us as the board is look at those three things, and is there anything out of place that we wanted to tinker with or guide? And you know, I read the report beforehand this weekend, you know, as I was looking at my board packet, and it's like, there's nothing I'd change here. You guys did a great job, you know, and I think about, you know, all the values people were talking about, access to water, and I think about the work we've been doing and we are doing right now in our parks system and our parks capital plan. The work we're doing with Harbor Vista and our potential deal we're working out right now with the city of Florence about the Ocean Woods area and the trade there to get the sanitary service for those campsites and make that a much more sustainable park. And just, you know, what a gem Harbor Vista is anyway. I mean, there's not many places you can pull an RV up and then walk out to the beach, you know, for the price we charge a night. You know, so it's, you know, and you know, there's that connection to water, you know, right there. And, you know, the work we did with the U.S. Forest Service to reopen Archie Knowles Campground and getting the grants from the state, and collaborative effort we did with the volunteers to save Archie and all, and bringing in the AmeriCorps folks to get rid of all the invasives and everything else and clear that area. And then you look at that park now, and there's that connection to water also. RV campgrounds right on a salmon bearing Class 1 stream. You know, it's just an amazing little facility tucked away that some people don't know about. And then we look at, you know, what we did with Armitage and improving the restroom facilities there, and we're consistently working towards these goals, and this master plan will kind of coalesce and look towards our future and have that long-term strategic plan that we need. And of course, it'll always be a living document that we need to adjust, just like our current strategic plan is. But it fits into, like, you know, you guys kept connecting this back into our strategic plan. It fits into that. And it's good to have these overarching goals and all that, because that's how we look forward and we can get our capital improvement plan to match into that, how we can get our deferred maintenance and maintenance work to match into these sort of goals and try and reach what the public really wants. And we develop what the public really wants from all that input that our volunteers that spent many hours helped us gather. So it's really, now we're developing that plan that will set the guidance for the future to match the expectations of the public that you guys helped us get. So I just want to thank everybody that was involved in that.
Thank you, Commissioner Blazevich. A response. Plenty is said there. You know, one thing I'd like to point out is later on today we're going to be talking about Ordinance 1350, which is a collaboration between Lane County and Springfield and Willamette Lane Park in creating open space on the edge of Springfield. So when we talk about connectivity and working with other jurisdictions, rivers to ridges, then we're working with the cities inside of Lane County, specifically this afternoon with Springfield. But we're also working with the city of Eugene on its master park plan. Having been a city councilor for 10 years, worked on that extensively in acquiring new open space surrounding, mostly on the perimeters of the city of Eugene. But the park bonds that we passed in the city of Eugene were not for maintenance. They were not for improvements of current parks. They were for acquisition of park land, and that's what we've aggressively done as a city of Eugene. But it's in correspondence and cooperation with Lane County. I'll also look at another park district we have, which is the Willamette Lane Park District, a challenged park district. It is going to be incumbent upon us. It is inside of Lane County. It's not inside of a city. It's incumbent upon us to make sure that it remains as whole as possible as it gets encroached upon by annexations by the city and its tax base shrinks. How do we cooperate with Willamette Lane to keep its with the River Road Park District to keep its identity and to make certain that the people who enjoy and love that park, number 73 in our gems, that it remains whole and that the people out there continue to have that particular asset. Well, your goals that you list include that. Not very not exactly and specifically, but it is what you added in the first, the second bullet to connect people to LC parks and improve park access and improving communications. So it's all a part of what we're doing, and I'm looking forward to the tactics as we move forward, not just this year and next year, but for the future that are going to be based upon the goals and the adherence to the strategic plan that you're presenting today. To me, it's not a shot in the dark, and it's not a point in time. This is history that we're talking about here. Generations to come are going to look at the work that you have done and hinge the decisions that are being made for many, many years to come on the decisions that you're putting forward as this task force. It's more than wonderful. It really is. It's generationally remarkable. So thank you very, very much. I think you've heard a lot of compliments that sometimes when you hear lots and lots of compliments, you kind of pick and choose, well, which one is real? This is all real. This is great stuff. This is great stuff. Thank you very much. And thank you for assembling the task force. Thanks for the work that you've done toward making it happen. And thanks for bringing these guys in, because everybody loves them too. So thank you. Any further discussion on this agenda item? Mr. Mokrajski, I believe that concludes today's agenda item. And thank you very much. Once again, you applauded. We're going to applaud.
We're going to have to revisit that no applause rule.
I think it's that's the latitude of the chair, perhaps, eh?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
I didn't see that in the
Congratulatory applause, but we're talking about during testimony.
Yeah.
A little bit different there.
Thank you. That was
We're handing out awards or congratulating or thanking people. I think that's appropriate.
That is just great stuff. That is just, when you look at our boat ramps and our parks, our water features, which they said was down the list, it's really not. Everything's to do with the water features, and a river runs through just about everything we have.
I like the idea of the non-motorized boat launch stuff because you and I as kayakers and canoeists.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't need much,
And I tell you, that the ramp at Cantrell into Coyote Creek needs work.
It does need work. It does. It does. And the one at West 11th at Coyote Creek needs work. But that's what we usually put in it right there.
Of course, getting into Silkhoose to get down to the river trail is pretty easy to do.
Just hop in your kayak and slide.
Yeah.
I'll give the room a moment to clear before we move forward, Mr. Mokrajski.
Got to read it. Give us 10 minutes.
And give a 10. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me of that. So at the moment, I'll mention that on the gavel. Well, we need to move forward with our business of the day, Mr. Mokrajski. We've concluded through 10A, which is Commission of Business and Announcements. Any agenda team requests from the board today?
So I'd just like
to
ask for head nods on having a future agenda item about disaster response and nursing and elderly facilities.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
And a future agenda item on disaster response. And you'd mentioned Steve Robinson and the organization that he works with. Yeah. So that's an asset for us.
In particular, looking at
nursing homes.
Nursing homes and elderly facilities.
When you hear of 100% fatalities in ECs or in Puerto Rico, 100% fatalities. It really.
Yeah. It's sick.
Mr. Chair, I don't know when we might want to talk about this, and I guess I'm not even proposing this as a future agenda item, but I would like to have us think about these wildfires again, because we had obviously a pretty rugged season this year, and I'm just looking at some of the news coverage on Northern California, and a lot of the California, wildfire picture is really completely different from ours. But the part that's in Northern California has a lot more similarities, and you see those wineries being wiped out and things like that, and it's more and more looking like that is our situation. I don't have enough information to even propose a work session. But I just think that's something we ought to keep an eye on. I totally agree with with you, Commissioner, that we should have that work session on the, on the nursing home, because that's what happens to people that are really in a very vulnerable state. It's kind of hard to say, well, they should have stocked up on water or, when they're in that kind of vulnerable state.
Absolutely. My youngest child called me from San Francisco last night with friends in Sonoma County who were in the middle of the night running down the streets, as their homes burned or were threatened. So it's that is a important element.
You may say that we don't have the same fire thing. If you want to ask Joe Zaludik what keeps him awake at night, it's the South Hills of Eugene in the summertime, and that north wind that we get in the late afternoon.
That dry north.
Yeah, so just, the wrong conditions, and we can be Sonoma County also. So it's worth thinking about and being prepared for. And then, it adds to that whole issue of, look at California. If there had been an elder care facility in that path, what would have happened? They can't move, like, the people who had their doors knocked on and some of those hotels were just knocked on and told to run.
Yeah.
Literally. Get out of your room and run.
Anything. Don't even put shoes on. Just get out of here. Yeah. Very good. And any further agenda team requests? Then we'll cover the balance of that business later on in the afternoon. At this point, I'm going to prepare to read us into executive session. At the sound of the gavel, several things will happen. One, we will be entering into executive session. The second, I will be disqualifying myself from participation in the discussion that will take place during executive session due to conflict of interest. I will be recused at the sound of the gavel, at which point the chair will be passed to Commissioner Bozievich. I'll require the chair at 1:30 when we return in our afternoon session. Additionally, at the sound of the gavel, there will be a 10-minute recess prior to the convening of the executive session, which will take place in the Board of Commissioners conference room upstairs. Commissioner Sorensen.
So just to make sure I understand the sequence, we're going to recess now. We're going to reconvene as executive session at roughly 11:10 a.m. And then we're going to go through the executive session. And then at 1:30, we're going to reconvene for our afternoon.
Right. We'll probably break for lunch between that.
Yep. Okay. Thank you so much.
That will all occur at the sound of the gavel, including my recusal and rejoining the commission at 1:30. So at this point, I'm going to read us into executive session. The Board of County Commissioners will meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602D, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed above. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. We reserve the right to come back out into public session should the need arise.